Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting edition of Beyond the Game. Beyond the Game brought to you by Schutte Excavating, Gillenhow Funeral Home, Batesville Chrysler Dodge Jeep, Byright Auto, Decatur County Recycling, and Russ Hubler Ford. Tom Fleming, Ryan Higginbotham, Jason Simpson live here in studio. Josh joining us, finally not on the golf course, but joining us via satellite. I just love to say that. Joining us via satellite. And actually, it could be today. I don't know if you heard, Josh. Now, it doesn't really affect you that much because you're not in studio. And, you know, we've threatened it for years. But for the first time ever, we are live streaming on YouTube. So if for whatever reason people want to look at our ugly mugs, they can pull us up on WTRE's YouTube page and watch the show live also. I mean, how big time are we?
That's pretty big. I mean, it is the best radio show in all of sports. So it only makes sense to take that next step into YouTube. So way to go, guys. How did that come about?
Well, Emily, can you turn it up a little bit more? Emily had it set up because when she's in here in the morning, she does that with all the people that come in. So since we have the camera here, it's like, why not? We've talked about it for years. And, of course, now that my retirement appears to be over, the shortest retirement in the history of radio, not even 1 week that I made it. But I was telling everybody before the show that, it's crazy because just a few weeks ago we had all that mushy "I love you, man" kind of stuff because I was leaving and got the T-shirt and everything, and somehow I'm still here. But yeah, I'm glad that we're finally able to do this on YouTube. Anybody that's watching, if you're one of our regular listeners, I think you can hear Josh because it runs through the board. So if not, somebody message one of us and let us know. But I think it all should be operational and the start of a new era in Beyond the Game.
And Josh, you mentioned it, the best radio show, sports radio show that there is. And we say that tongue-in-cheek, being semi-funny, but can we all admit, and we know this to be factual, there is literally no sports show that has a higher batting average than us.
Absolutely.
100%.
As a matter of fact, I'm trying to think what it was. Oh, I know now. We have talked, we talk things we speak them into existence. And for a long time, we've talked about how the 2020 NBA championship that the Lakers won doesn't really count because it was in the bubble and all that kind of stuff. Came out this week, Daryl Morey, who back then was the general manager of the Rockets, and now is the president of basketball operations for the 76ers. He said, and allegedly other people in those types of positions were asked about it, and they said that they feel like the Lakers championship in 2020 in the bubble is illegitimate as well. So we've been saying it for a long time. Finally, they decided to listen to us. So once again, I think that takes us up to 98.13% accuracy.
Oh, so we got back above 98%.
Yes.
Perfect. I mean, we know that our words are magical.
Yep.
We're just going to say that. The power that we yield. And good friend of the show was on last week. Scott Weiland is using YouTube now to partake in the show, and he says he does hear Josh, so we're all good as far as that goes. Well, Josh, we know our new segment taking over for Get Off My Lawn, and we're already approaching the time where it won't be considered a new segment anymore. It'll just be the anchor segment for the show, what we come in with each week. And we know we started a couple weeks back with the Hot Take Hotel. Well, you weren't able to be on last week, and there is a wrinkle to this that you may or may not have gleaned from the first week. So each week, one of us will have our hot take for the week. And the first week, mine was the argument, the hot take, that historically, Steph Curry is a better player than LeBron James. And I presented you guys with arguments, and we went through it. And that is something I would honestly, I'm not saying I'm 100% on board with it, but I'm willing to make that argument. Like, I would have that conversation with somebody and not be afraid to stand behind it. Well, then last week, my argument, my hot take, was that women's basketball in general, but the WNBA, it was Shaquille O'Neal was on a podcast, and they were asking him about, the pay in the WNBA, and he said that they deserve to be paid more in these things. But he said the one thing, his suggestion to garner even more interest and viewership and things would be to lower the goal, not to like a clown level of 8 feet or anything, but, maybe 9.5 feet something, so that you got a much higher portion of the women in the WNBA able to dunk the ball, because he said that creates highlight moments and all of these things. And so I had the hot take that, yes, that indeed should happen. They should lower the goal across, and I had all kinds of arguments behind it and facts and figures, and Tom was 100% convinced that I believed this, and in no way did I. I did such a great job of selling it, just like I told you in that text. So I'm not sure where you stand on this week, but for future segments, just understand that you don't have to believe it for a half a second, but you have to sell it like you do, and then we will decide whether or not you truly do believe your hot take.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey guys,
good.
Since we're on YouTube for the first time, everything's working great, which is amazing to me. Just a reminder to everybody that's watching on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe and hit like first of all,
you go,
then
Tom.
Subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're going live. So like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. So
Tom,
everybody remind me to do that again at the end of the show.
YouTuber right
Yeah,
there.
I was going to say, you've got a future in streaming, Tom.
Well, thanks to Dave Henderson. He's the one that handles all the tech stuff here, and he's got all this going, so appreciate him.
Yeah, thank you. But you sounded just like a YouTuber. We're going to have to start calling you Mr. Beast or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, Josh. Well, we're excited, waiting with bated breath. Who's checking into the Hot Take Hotel this week?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this one over the last couple weeks, and there are some that have kind of come to mind, and I won't go through many of them. I was actually going to use one that Hulk Hogan wasn't on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling superstars, but then his untimely death kind of I couldn't really throw that hot take out there, so we'll save that one for later. But this one a lot of people would consider to be a stretch, just based off the history and what's happened over the last 10 years. But I do want to throw this out there for my first time on the Hot Take Hotel. Is the Kansas City Chiefs will not make the NFL playoffs this year. And for 7 years since they've had Patrick Mahomes, they've been in at least the AFC Championship in every game or every year. But this year, 25-26, the Kansas City Chiefs will not make the NFL playoffs.
Oh, there's no way. There's no way that's going to happen. They should be better. Go ahead.
Here's what I'm saying. I'm going even one step further. The Kansas City Chiefs will not make the playoffs, and Patrick Mahomes will play in every single game.
Wow.
So what's our ammo behind this? How are we supporting this argument?
Well, first off, and I'm not even going to go into how the NFL has changed another rule so they can help them out with the implementation of no chain gang, or anything along those lines. It's all going to be electronic line calls for first down. So even taking out the officials in this, the Kansas City Chiefs aren't making the playoffs, and here's why. I'll give you a few reasons here. Because of where they finished last year and who they play this year. on paper, based off of last year's record for every team, they have the hardest schedule in the league. They start the year playing, they have to travel to Brazil and play the LA Chargers. And you know that Jim Harbaugh has been preparing all year. The Chargers improved a lot last year under Jim Harbaugh. Justin Herbert is going to take another step up. They have a better supporting cast. So they're going to go in week 1 and lose their season opener in Brazil to the Chargers. Week 2, well, we all saw what happened in the Super Bowl. It's a rematch, and yes, it's at Arrowhead, but it's a rematch with the Philadelphia Eagles in week 2. And the way that the Eagles played, the way they manhandled them last year, they're going to start out the season 0-2. They also have other games like the Ravens in week 4. They've got the Denver Broncos a couple times. And Denver with Bo Nix and Sean Payton in year 2, they kind of took a step up last year. They've improved their roster, so there's a couple more losses for you. And the big stat that I always go back to, and we've talked about this, statistically, obviously, the NFL is 500 in one-score games. That's just how it all works out because each team has to play each other, right? However, the Kansas City Chiefs they've won 17 straight one-score games. Now, a lot of people can sit back there and say, well, they have the best quarterback in the NFL. They have the best coaching staff in the NFL. All these things can come true, and all these things are pretty true when it comes to Andy Reid. But Patrick Mahomes is playing a little bit more conservative. He took a little bit of a statistical step back last year. He wasn't his normal self. They don't score as many points as they have in the past. They're more reliant on their defense and everything. Patrick Mahomes' main target, Travis Kelce, is now 36 years old. He contemplated retirement. I predicted he's taking a step back. Some of these young pieces where in 2023, Patrick Mahomes, the year after they lost Tyreek Hill, they led the NFL in drops. Their big playmaker, one of their big playmakers, I believe Rashee Rice, is suspended. Xavier Worthy is looking like he could possibly be suspended. And then they're relying on a young group of pass catchers again. But again, 17 straight one-score wins. At some point, statistically, that's going to even out to 500. That's just the law of averages. That's what everything has always said, and that's how it's going to be. Patrick Mahomes in his career versus the AFC, they are 64-19 total against the AFC, but they're also 51-19 against in one-score games against the AFC. So that's going to even out. They're not going to get the bounces that they typically get. Sometimes Patrick Mahomes throws up these prayer balls, kind of like Jordan Love throws up, and he either gets a pass interference called or an interception. That's going to even out. So just based off the law of averages, some of their key players, they've lost some guys on the interior of the defensive line. They play the toughest schedule in the NFL, and I predict that they go 10-7. But also, you have to think of some of the teams that are in the AFC. The Chargers are taking that step. I already talked about the Denver Broncos. You have Buffalo, who's up there. You have the Ravens that are up there that a lot of people don't talk about. You have the Houston Texans you have the Houston Texans that are up there, and even the Indianapolis Colts could possibly go. No, that's too. I was going to say they could go into Arrowhead and win this year. That's too big of a hot take. But the Raiders are going to steal a game. The Broncos are going to sweep the Kansas City Chiefs this year.
Steelers,
they play
Bengals.
They've got the Bengals are there. So the Kansas City Chiefs are not making the playoffs this year.
Wow. Well, first of all, I have to say that I think you truly believe this hot take just because I know how you are. But it's such a bad argument to make, not on from my standpoint. My argument back to you, because it's so simple, but again, it's what makes it so powerful. 2 words: Patrick Mahomes. It's just like when Michael Jordan was in the league. Until he proves otherwise, he's still Patrick Mahomes. And I understand what you're saying. Like, yes, eventually law of averages says that it's going to get back to 500 and things. But you just said it, 17 straight one-score games. That means they've got to lose 17 straight one-score games to get it back to even. Like, nobody wins 17 in a row. So what's to say they're not going to win 2, 3, 4 more like that? Simply because it's Patrick Mahomes, and I'm going to throw in there Andy Reid. I get so tired of the conversation starting with Bill Belichick, and then we're going to throw in Andy Reid. Andy Reid, to me, is just as good a coach or better than Bill Belichick, but that's not the argument here. Your point is very well taken that they will play the hardest schedule in the NFL, but for how many straight years could we say that? And they just continue to do the same thing year over year over year. Yes, Travis Kelce is a year older. He did contemplate retirement, but he came out and he basically has admitted on multiple occasions that his number one sole focus last season was not football. And when he decided to come back, he has made that his clear intention. Like he's going to show people who Travis Kelce still is. And there are the NFL right now is full of phenomenal tight ends. Like it's become kind of that kind of sexy position, if you will. And Travis Kelce, in my opinion, will go back to the Travis Kelce of old. He's going to have, in a world of very strong tight ends, he will have an all-pro type season. And I'm not saying they're winning 14, 15 games, but there's not as long as what you say holds true, Patrick Mahomes plays in every game, I can't see a world where they can't at least get into the playoffs. Just me.
And just here are just some of their schedules and my predicted losses for them. And I'm not going to go game by game, but I already said they're going to start 0-2. Week 4, they have the Baltimore Ravens. Now it's at Arrowhead, but it's still Lamar Jackson, right? They still have Lamar Jackson, so there is a very realistic possibility that they're 1-3 going into Week 5. At Jacksonville, I kind of am a believer in what they're doing in Jacksonville. I know it's still the Jaguars, but the Colts seemingly they never beat them, and I'm not putting the Colts with the Chiefs up there. But with a new coaching staff, it's a Monday Night Football game. It's at Jacksonville. That could be a potential loss. But then they still have to play Detroit, who has given them fits, Washington with their upstart and Jaden Daniels, and then they're at Buffalo before they hit their bye week. So before they hit their bye week, they're at Buffalo. They have the Commanders, they have the Lions, they have the Ravens, they have the Eagles, and they have the Chargers. And then they come off a bye week, and they have to go to Denver, who I'm predicting is going to be going to win the AFC West and get that first-round bye. So for that to happen, they're not going to go into Denver and win. Again, Sean Payton, Bo Nix in year 2. They have some upstart playmakers on the outside at Denver. They have the Colts, and then they're at Dallas on Thanksgiving Day. And who knows what's happening with Dallas right now with Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons requesting a trade. He's basically what Khalil Mack was when the Bears traded for him back in 2018. He's guaranteed to get you 13, 14 sacks a year. So as long as he's still there, I'm not saying that they're going to lose 17 straight one-score games. I know that you're not saying that.
No.
But there's a world where they can go 3-8, be one of the worst teams in one-score games, as opposed to being 11-0 like they were last year in the regular season. So a 3-8 that in one-score games, that's 8 losses right there. And who's to say that they don't get blown out or go 9-8, just 9-8, and that not be enough to get in when you have the likes of Denver, the Chargers, Houston, Buffalo, Baltimore. Aaron Rodgers wasn't horrible last year for a god-awful Jets team. Who's to say that he doesn't come into Pittsburgh with DK Metcalf? The Cincinnati Bengals. The AFC is so strong, and what Kansas City has been able to do in one-score games with Patrick Mahomes not necessarily taking a step back in as opposed to, in relation to winning games, but he's taking a statistical step back. Their offense was more middle of the pack last year, and they relied on that defense and kicking game. They used 3 different kickers last year. So it just takes one drunken idiot kicker to miss a couple field goals, and then you're staring at 9-8, and you're fighting for a tiebreaker, or it's coming down to the last couple games of the season, which is Denver at home and at Las Vegas. So I'm predicting the Chiefs go 9-8, and I'm predicting they're missing the playoffs for the first time in Patrick Mahomes' career.
And you know, the thing is, it is a valid argument to have, again, because of the schedule and things. But when you go through that schedule, if you put no judgment into it or anything, oh man, that's tough, that's tough, that's tough. But then go through the names on that list. There's only 2.5 teams that you named that we really know who they are. You know who the Eagles are, and you know what they're going to be. You know who the Bills are, and you know what they're going to be. And then the half I give to the Ravens because there's some weeks they look like the best franchise in the history of the NFL, and then they inexplicably lose games. You're like, how does that happen when you've got Lamar Jackson? So that's why I give them a half. But outside of that, like, yeah, I get it. It's cute to say, well, man, I really like what they're doing in Jacksonville. Or, man, the Commanders, and this isn't me bashing the Commanders. I actually love the story, and, you know, they were so much fun to watch last year. But kind of to your argument with the one-score games with the Chiefs, look at some of the wins, and sorry to bring it up, the sore subject, because one of them was the Bears. Look at some of the wins that Washington had. Can you rely on that's going to happen again? Or now, granted, they may not be in that position. They don't have to worry about it. Detroit, were they for real? Did those injuries take too much of a toll last year? What's their roster look like? So it's one of those, when you start to really dissect it on paper, there's only 2.5 teams. You truly know who they are. And, yeah, when you look at Sean Payton's resume and what he's done, and you look at the rookie season that Bo Nix had, great, love it. So year 2, you would think another year better. Is it, though? You don't. Granted, I know this. You can't predict the future, although we do a pretty darn good job of it on here. But my argument back to that would be that there's truly only 2.5 teams that you look at and you know exactly what you're going to get, and you look at it and go, man, they're going to have to be really, really good to win those games, and we know it going in.
Yeah, I think a lot of it I put into when I was going through the Chiefs and really bringing this hot take here, and it's one of the hotter takes that you can have because, again, Patrick Mahomes has been to the AFC Championship game at least every year that he started a full season in his career, at least the AFC Championship game. But if you're just looking at coaching staffs, when it comes to now compared to Andy Reid, who is for my money, at least the second greatest coach of all time, if not the greatest coach of all time, because Andy Reid, yes, he does have Patrick Mahomes, but he was still winning when he was in Philadelphia, and he was still a top coach when he was at Philadelphia. But if you just look at coaching staffs, like, we don't like Jim Harbaugh in this show. We've stated that for about 7 years, or since the very first edition of Beyond the Game with me on there. But Jim Harbaugh is a great NFL head coach, and he's proven that at every stop that he's been. Nick Sirianni at Philadelphia, well, they're the champs, right? John Harbaugh, fantastic coach. You know what you're getting from the Ravens. They have Lamar Jackson. They have Derrick Henry. Dan Campbell, even though he lost both coordinators, do we really think that Detroit's going to take a step back? They're going to continue to play the way that they've always played. They're going to play under Dan Campbell. They're going to play that style of football. They seemingly rise up when it comes to playing against some of the better teams in the NFL. Look what Washington did last year with I believe Ron Rivera as their coach. I mean, they're a great staff. In Buffalo, you have Sean McDermott and that offensive coordinating staff with Josh Allen and what he's got. And then Sean Payton, like, what they're doing, they're not only playing really good teams, they're playing really good coaching staffs as well. And I just feel like that they can get prepared for that and kind of regress to the mean a little bit. And, 9-8 is my prediction for Kansas City.
Well, see, now you've already changed your argument through this because at first you said they were going to go 10-7. Now you're saying 9-8.
Yeah, I think they're worse. Yeah, exactly.
So in the midst of your discussion about this and you defending your position, you changed your prediction on their schedule during that monologue about the Chiefs.
Yeah, he's convinced they're going to be even worse.
No, but he said initially they were going to go 10-7. Anyway, Dan Quinn.
Such a good argument.
Dan Quinn is the head coach of the Commanders.
Okay.
Not Ron Rivera. I'm going to go with you saying 10-7, and I think if you go back through and look at the number of 10-7 teams that don't make the playoffs, I bet that's a really, really small number. Secondly, you do have Patrick Mahomes, and I mean, he's got 7 years of showing what he's capable of doing and does things that shouldn't be done. But this year you're going to have, probably after about a 6-game suspension, you're going to have Rashee Rice, who you didn't have most of last year because he got hurt. You've got a healthy Hollywood Brown, who you didn't have at all last year. And you've got Xavier Worthy, who's in his second season, and he's not going to have the drops that he had last year. The other part of it, and the most important part, the Chiefs got exposed in the Super Bowl because of their offensive line. It was horrible. And they put a lot of money into improving that offensive line, which if you give Patrick Mahomes another second, he's going to make big plays. He's going to make something happen. So I think a lot of games, you're kind of predicting that they're going to lose every big game, and I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not sure with the Chargers. I think they'll have a good year. I think they'll make the playoffs, but I'm still not sure that they're going to outdo the Chiefs.
Well, look, Jawan Taylor, their best offensive lineman, arguably, led the NFL in penalties last year. They drafted Josh Simmons, your boy from Ohio State, in the first round. He's coming off a major knee injury. They did get exposed in the Super Bowl last year. I think Patrick Mahomes got sacked something like 6 or 7 times. And then if you just look at who they played last year and what they did last year, they can slip up. I mean, they only beat Carolina by 3. Yeah, and now granted, that's a win. But they beat Denver by 2, Carolina by 3, the Raiders by 2, the Chargers by 2. Like, they're not blowing teams out in traditional Patrick Mahomes style like they were before that. They beat the Falcons by 5. They beat the Bengals by 1. They won controversial in game 1 against Baltimore because Mark Andrews missed a touchdown by a cleat mark. I mean, so there are ways that this can turn around. I did say 10-7. I'm going to go one step further. I'll go back because my argument's so damn good, Tom, that they're going to go 9-8.
Well, Mark Andrews didn't miss the winning touchdown by a cleat mark. Mark Andrews dropped the ball. So it wasn't a cleat mark. He dropped the ball.
Wasn't there a controversial call at the end of the game?
Not that I remember. You could be right. I may be mistaken, but I don't remember that from watching the game.
Go ahead.
I think that they may fall back a little bit, maybe 11-6. But I don't see them being any worse than that. I think Mahomes takes you from that 9 that you're predicting to the 11 that I'm predicting. I think there's going to be 2 games that you're not expecting them to win that they will win.
Because he's Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, because he's Patrick Mahomes, and nobody else is. And the big thing, doesn't matter how many points you win by. It's like Al Davis used to say, just win, baby, just win.
That's the sign of great teams, when you're able to win games like that. You may not have your best, but you find ways to win. When it matters, you find ways to win the games. And it's frustrating as fans of those teams and maybe even as coaches because you're like, we're not playing as well as we can, but you still find a way to win. And trust me, that's dangerous territory to be living in. 17 one-score games, that's unheard of in almost any sport other than like baseball or soccer where they're normally
I watched darts on the Ocho yesterday.
But I already made my I don't know if it's a prediction, my statement. I say Josh truly believes this. In this hot take, he's not making an argument trying to convince us of it. I think he came into this believing this. Tom?
I agree. I think he's.
I do believe he is on board with this. Yeah.
All right, Josh. So Are the three of us correct that you're not just presenting this as a hot take? This is, you truly believe this to be what's going to happen this year?
100%, and Tom just made me talk myself into it even more. And I'm finding more and more stats to say that I'm going to be right. They were 17th in pass blocking win rate last year. They lost All-Pro guard Joe Thuney to the Chicago Bears. Your Super Bowl champions next year. That's definitely a hot take. That's not true. But they lost their dependable guard in Joe Thuney. They Josh Simmons, I don't believe, is going to be able to fill in very well at left tackle because he's coming off an injury. He's going to need an extra year. They signed a career backup to start at tackle in his place until he's healthy. I don't trust that. And again, Jawan Taylor, their right tackle, who just got abused in the Super Bowl, is continuing to take a step back. So Patrick Mahomes is going to be under more pressure. The defense is going to go from top 5 to about top 12. And they're not going to win as many one-score games. So, yeah.
I don't know if you got to watch McAfee at all this week, but I don't remember what day that it was. He had one of the NFL talking heads from I can't remember which one it was, but it's not one of them that was that's normally just a blowhard. You know, he actually comes with some good stuff. And he was talking about Tom's favorite Chief. Is it Simmons?
Josh Simmons,
Simmons. And they mentioned that he had a major injury and that the Chiefs were able to snag him at the back end of the first round.
Yeah.
But this guy said, and then McAfee and everybody on the panel were like, this guy, he was not a top 10 pick. He was most likely top 7 pick if he's not injured.
Yeah.
He's that kind of good, and the Chiefs were able to sneak in and get him at the end of the first round. So if he's able to recover more quickly, and they showed video of him in training camp, and that guy is a mountain of a man, first of all.
Everything that I've read on Buckeye message boards, all that kind of stuff, he's healthy. He's good. He was almost ready to go for the national championship game this past season, so he's good to go. He's going to be fine from game 1.
All right.
Okay, that's all right, Tom. Well, we'll see as he's leading the NFL in penalties next year.
Well, Josh, you kind of brought it up in what you were going to bring as a hot take, and I know Tom and I talked about it last week, so we don't want to rehash a bunch of topics, but you weren't able to speak about the passing of Hulk Hogan, and you know, it's a very well-known fact that we're, to varying degrees, the four of us on the show are all fans of sports entertainment, and you know, you can get into technical wrestling arguments and claim that Hulk Hogan isn't deserving of a spot on Mount Rushmores and things like that. But Tom and I both agreed the WWE, first WWF to what is now the WWE, is not what it is today if not for Hulk Hogan. He is the singular force behind what made sports entertainment what it is today, because for years and years and years, it was basically just a carnival sideshow. It was regional. They had their own little pockets. And yes, it does matter that Vince McMahon bought WWF from his dad, and then he made it national. That is significant. But you needed that guy to be your anchor, to be what holds everything together. And that's what Hulk Hogan was, because, you know, Tom and I talked last week. Andre the Giant was the circus freak. It's not like he was a great wrestler. And Andre the Giant didn't have a character of any kind. He was just massive. When he would come to the ring, they introduced him as the eighth wonder of the world because he was so freakishly big. But then comes Hulk Hogan, and the character and the icon and the say your prayers, eat your vitamins, all of those things. I don't think that wrestling, sports entertainment, whatever you want, that they don't get to the level that they are at now without Hulk Hogan setting the foundation as high as he did. That's not to say you wouldn't have all of these personalities and things that you have today, because you most likely would. But the floor was set so high because of Hulk Hogan. He is the singular driving force that raise, they always say what the rising tides raise ships. I mean, he wasn't a rising tide, he was a tsunami, and he carried that organization for 15 years of my childhood. It was Hulk Hogan and everybody else, and they started to develop personalities behind that, and you started to really get into different characters and things, but it all starts and ends in that argument. I don't even want to use the word argument because it's not an argument. When you speak about it, it has to start and end with Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at kind of the flagpoles or the tent poles, I guess, of what's holding up wrestling and what held up wrestling for so long. And he main evented 7 of the first 8 WrestleManias, and there isn't a WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan being that star and teaming with Mr. T in WrestleMania 1, and then being on Rocky and having other movies. Really, that first wrestler to go into Hollywood. I mean, Andre the Giant played some characters, but again, that was kind of, and not trying to demean him, that circus freak, I guess, for lack of a better word, of Andre the Giant. But look, they drew 80,000 people filling the Pontiac Silverdome for WrestleMania 3, which was Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. You look at some of the other biggest matches or biggest moments in wrestling history, and him joining the NWO at WCW, which really sparked that Monday Night Wars that everybody talks about as the golden age of wrestling. That doesn't happen without Hulk Hogan making that turn, and then coming back and wrestling against The Rock in WrestleMania 18, where he was the bad guy, The Rock was the good guy, and with about 70,000 people in attendance, they made the switch. And it's arguably one of the greatest wrestling matches in the history of pro wrestling. So he's been involved in the biggest match of all time in Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. He's been involved in one of the greatest matches of all time with The Rock at another WrestleMania. And then, again, headlining 7 of the first 8 WrestleManias. So, I can, at my age at 37, get lost in saying that Hulk Hogan isn't on that Mount Rushmore. If you put guys like Stone Cold and The Rock and John Cena and maybe The Undertaker or Ric Flair or whatever, but there isn't professional wrestling like we know it without Hulk Hogan. And everybody knew him. He was one of those guys that kind of transcends the sport, like a Michael Jordan or like a Tiger Woods, where if he was anywhere in the world, you could pull anybody out of anywhere and they would know exactly who it was. And I don't think you can say that about Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? Like a lot of people would know him, but as soon as Hulk Hogan walks in a room, 100% of however many amount of people you have in there know exactly who Hulk Hogan is. So, what he did for the sport and what he did for fans and people like yourself, Jason, that grew up watching Hulk Hogan, he's the, we use this a lot, but he's the GOAT of professional wrestling and was the GOAT. And it's going to be basically impossible to do what he did and change the sport for how he changed it.
Yeah, you talked about it, Josh, when he went to WCW and switched to that Hollywood Hogan character. That's when they talk about how WCW beat WWE in TV ratings for 83 straight weeks. That was during that time, and during the course of that 83 weeks, WWE was on the verge of going out of business like WCW ended up doing, because Ted Turner was throwing crazy money at all these wrestlers to get them into WCW, and WWE then made that switch over, and they were able to come back with The Rock and Stone Cold, all that kind of stuff, and get the ratings back in their favor. WCW ends up going out of business. So, yeah, I mean, Hogan's got to be there.
And it's funny you mentioned that, Tom, because 83 weeks, you know who Eric Bischoff is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Former... He wasn't Ted Turner would have owned WCW.
He was the general manager.
Yeah, he ran it and all those things. Yeah. That's the name of his podcast, 83 Weeks. And if you don't know, you don't know. Yep. But, Josh, to your point, Tom and I kind of talked about this last week. If you just want to go into actual wrestling and things like that, Hulk Hogan's not going to break your top 20. He was not a great technical wrestler. He was a great character. He was a great personality, things like that. You know, you knew you were going to get three things in every single Hulk. It was so predictable. But, you know, when I was a kid, I'm 8, 9, 10 years old watching this. Even though I knew they were coming at some point in the match, I couldn't wait to see him. He was going to be getting beat up, getting hit with punches, and then, you know, he would start shake. He'd get hit by one, he'd start shaking, and then finally there would be a punch, he'd get hit, and he'd stop, and he'd just stare at him, he'd point that big finger, and then what was going to happen next? He'd start hitting him, throw him off the ropes, big boot, they go down, drop the leg, and the match was going to be over.
And by the way, one of the worst finishing moves in the history of professional wrestling, that leg drop is not some. Of course, that's the same thing as the people's elbow. You know, horrible finishing moves.
But what were they able to do? Both of them were able to do because of their character. They sold them so well. Like, you know, you would get those two things leading up to the big leg drop. He sold it. It was a performance. The Rock would take the elbow sleeve off, and he'd do his hands across his body, and then there would be that dramatic pause right before he dropped the people's elbow. Yeah, it's a silly move, but everybody knew what was coming, and they sold it so well. Like, oh my gosh, that's the most devastating thing that's happened in this match. But again, when it comes to Hulk Hogan and you measure his importance, I don't know that there's a close second. He's as we've talked about before, Tiger Woods, people can have great golf years and everything. Tiger Woods is in a stratosphere that nobody will ever touch. And I think, obviously, different scenarios because everything is scripted. It's not fake. Everything is scripted. But in that industry, Hulk Hogan is in his own stratosphere. And there are people of huge importance, but they don't even start to rise above that Mendoza line, if you will, to get close to what Hulk Hogan meant to the industry.
Yeah, and I have to mention that they had the series come out this week on Netflix, WWE Unreal, where it goes back behind the curtain and into the writer's room and how they come up with all this stuff. And by the way, I'm really upset because last night on SmackDown, they turned John Cena babyface last night instead of waiting until Sunday during the match with Cody. So I'm confused because I thought for sure Cody was going to win on Sunday night, but now I don't know since they turned Cena back.
Okay, I didn't watch it, so you got to. How did they make this turn? What'd they do?
At the beginning of the show, Cena came out, and then Cody came out right after that, and then because Cena went through when he first came into the ring, the bad guy that he was, and then he started talking about how it was the worst thing that had ever happened was turning him heel, and that it really wasn't who he was. And then he went back into his old "the champ is here" and all that kind of stuff. And Cody, somehow the timekeeper had a couple beers, and so they have beers and they toast and shake hands, and so I don't know and normally I can figure this stuff out. I don't know what they're going to do now. I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Josh, you had a thought.
Well, I was just going to say, outside of probably John Cena, when it comes to Make-A-Wish Foundation and wishes granted, and before there was before all of that started, Hulk Hogan didn't have that opportunity, I guess, to be in the shoes that John Cena was at the height of his popularity, fulfilling all of these Make-A-Wish Foundation wishes. But arguably, nobody has been better with young kids throughout his career than Hulk Hogan. And yes, he had some personal stuff come up, and as we all do, he shouldn't be taken down for that. But every interaction you saw with young children that Hulk Hogan had was always fantastic, similar to what John Cena's done. And yeah, he was the face of wrestling from basically the 1980s all the way until his passing. So it's everybody's heroes eventually go, right? And but Hulk Hogan was a good one for wrestling.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
so go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I'm making a major transition, but I just clicked on ESPN, was looking on my computer, and something just really, really bothered me. And there's a lot of stuff that can bother you from ESPN. Them buying NFL Network in the Red Zone channel, which we can get into that probably in the second hour, but. They came out with college football playoff, 32 teams who can make the college football playoffs, and the Indiana Hoosiers are not on that list.
Oh, good Lord.
The team that made the playoffs last year, that across the board is better than they were last year, position by position. They also have people predicting their starting quarterback to go in the first round, Fernando Mendoza, but number 30 on this list, the Nebraska Cornhuskers got a mention on this over the Indiana Hoosiers.
Is Paul Feinbaum in charge of this list?
He must be.
No, but the person that put this together is Heather Dinich, so I'll leave it at that.
Normally, she's pretty good at that, but 32 teams that can make the playoffs?
They put 32 teams that can make the playoffs, and the Indiana Hoosiers are not one of them.
That's insane.
And I know if you go by what Vegas says, who is way smarter than Heather Dinich, they're one of the top 32 teams when it comes to title odds. But you have teams on here like Texas Tech, TCU, Nebraska, Baylor, Virginia Tech, BYU, Kansas, Florida. I mean, Arizona State, Oklahoma, who won 3 conference games last year, mind you. Anyway, yeah, that just bothered me. No Indiana.
And we obviously know our affinity for the Hoosiers because they are the 3rd greatest team in college football. We'll just say that, okay? But it's funny that you say that. Do you think that Pro Football Focus might know what they're talking about? They've got a pretty good track record, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of their metrics are very solid. Yes.
Okay, and can we agree? Maybe not overall defensively, but overall roster. Don't forget, IU went to the college football playoff last year, right? Can we agree that the overall roster is probably even better than it was last year?
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
I mean,
Okay.
Curtis Rourke was fantastic last year on a torn ACL, but by all accounts, Fernando Mendoza is better than Curtis Rourke.
And you have his 2 best wide receivers, Curtis Rourke's 2 best wide receivers are back. You get Roman Hemby in the backfield. You have an offensive line that's going to be even better than it was last year. But why do I bring up Pro Football Focus? So you have a better roster on a team that went to the college football playoff last year with Curt Cignetti at the helm. Let's not forget, like we spent all this time earlier this morning talking about, well, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. Curt Cignetti is Curt Cignetti. He's not changing who he is. He's not changing how he coaches, which means his teams play like his personality, which means they're always at least going to have a chance as long as he's there. And I will say that until proven otherwise. Because of the guy on the sideline, IU is always going to have a chance. But in saying all of those things, Pro Football Focus ranks Indiana and Curt Cignetti's 2025 football schedule among nation's easiest, which I'm not taking that as a slight. I'm like, Heather Dinich, you think with one of the easiest schedules in college football that they aren't one of the top 32 teams in the nation?
I will say that after what happened last year, IU has a high bar to reach because there are going to be a bunch of people on that committee that are going to be looking for reasons to keep Indiana out rather than why Indiana should be in.
I wouldn't disagree with that. They have as a 2-loss team, they would have a much harder road to hoe than other 2-loss teams. I could agree with that because, and I know we haven't done our official predictions and previews and things like that, but when you look at IU's schedule, even Josh and I as IU fans can look at it and go, all things being equal, most likely they're going to lose at Oregon and they're going to lose at Penn State. But other than that, there may only be one other game that they could even possibly, and I say this as possibly, they could possibly be underdogs, and it would be like a 1.5 point spread when they go to Iowa, simply because it's at Iowa, and Iowa's historically not an easy place to play. I get that. But there's only 2 games on the schedule that as an IU fan I look at and go, man, everything's going to have to go perfect for them to win either of those games. And it's at Oregon and at Penn State. Everybody, the media, everybody across the nation, and this is what I love as an IU fan, they're all talking about who's going to be this year's Indiana. Well, that means because Indiana's done something. So I love that. Everybody, they're the nation's darlings right now. The Illinois Fighting Illini. Well, first of all, Brett Bielema needs to mix in a salad with his 8,000 Big Macs that he eats every day. That's number one. Number two, we've already been through this on the show. You look at their record last year; they were 10-3, I think it was. Isn't that right? 10-3.
Yes.
And outside of their bowl victory against South Carolina, who, yes, they've got Lenora Sellers. He's one of the most exciting quarterbacks in the nation. But you notice how the period was at the end of the sentence. Then what? Okay. Other than that victory, the record of their wins last year of the teams that they beat was something like 26-60. It's not like they beat Murderers Row. Their biggest win until they beat South Carolina, you know what it was? Michigan. Guess who else beat Michigan? It took overtime to beat Purdue at Purdue. And so I say all of this to say everybody thinks, oh, Illinois A has to come to the Rock for the first big game of the season for either team. It's at IU. It's week 4. You're trying to tell me that Curt Cignetti isn't going to, just like he did last year with Nebraska, game days in the house, everybody's excited, and IU absolutely embarrasses Nebraska. I'm calling it right now that it's exactly like that, and IU just the game will be over at halftime when they play Illinois.
And also that first home game for IU, it's going to be the debut of Hoosier the Bison. So that take that into account too.
Exactly. That's worth at least a touchdown, isn't it?
No, nobody is happier than Curt Cignetti with all the offseason talk about IU has one of the easiest schedules in the country, and the last year was a fluke. Nobody's happier than Curt Cignetti that's happening, because he can use that every single day at every single practice. Yeah, we did this last year, but everybody thinks this. Everybody thinks this, and he's doing that. Like if you look at, and we know that the game, the final score wasn't necessarily indicative of the game, right? So Notre Dame wins 27-17. It was a 10-point game. So if we're just going off of final scores, and IU shouldn't have been in it, all this stuff. Well, Ohio State beat Tennessee by 25. Texas beat Clemson by 2 touchdowns. Penn State beat Southern Methodist SMU by 28. Ohio State beat Oregon by 20. Notre Dame beat Georgia by 13. Penn State beat Boise State by 17. Ohio State beat Texas by 14. Ohio State beat Notre Dame by 11. There were only 2 scores that were closer than Indiana and Notre Dame throughout the whole playoffs last year. And that was Notre Dame beating Penn State and Texas beating Arizona State. Other than that, that was the closest matchup, was Notre Dame and Indiana. And you're telling me that with one of the easier schedules in the country, that BYU's schedule, and I haven't looked at it, but BYU plays teams, whatever you think of Illinois, I don't think BYU plays a team like Illinois. I don't think BYU plays a team like going to Iowa. I don't think BYU plays going to Oregon. I don't think BYU plays at Penn State. Like, don't give me that's easier schedule than BYU playing San Diego State at home or on the road, wherever, or Utah State. Like, don't give me that, because arguably there are no 2 tougher games on anybody's schedule than Penn State at Penn State and Oregon at Oregon. Maybe if you played at Ohio State, and that's about it. Maybe at Georgia. But those 2 games alone should make up any difference for whatever anybody else's schedule is.
And let's go back a year, and on paper, IU's schedule was going to be incredibly difficult. You can't control what the other teams do. You had Michigan on your schedule, the defending national champion. You had no idea they were going to fall off the cliff like that. You had Washington on your schedule, defending national runner-up. You had no idea they would fall. I mean, you can't control what these other teams do, and so people look at this and go, well, it's going to be the easiest. So take out those first 3 non-conference games. We will get to this at the top of the hour. I have in no way begrudged Curt Cignetti for scheduling the way that they do. But, who's to say that this year Iowa ends up being really good? Everybody looks, they're going to be fringe top 25. I don't know if that would be a great win. So let's say IU goes on the road and they're able to eke out a 5-point win over Iowa. Well, then Iowa ends the season and they're 9-3 in the regular season. Well, on paper, it wasn't supposed to be that difficult. That win should mean something. So again, yes, nobody has played a game yet, but to sit here and go, IU would not have, because Tom's absolutely right. They've got a very slippery slope to climb up when it comes to getting to the playoff again if they're a 2-loss team. But to do it based on where we're sitting right now on August 2nd because somebody says it's the easiest schedule, how about we let some things play out? And, like Texas and I don't think it'll happen, but Texas and Ohio State open the year. What if, for Tom's sake, we'll say, what if Ohio State is fortunate enough to win, but then they go on to lose 3 games? Should there be – but then on top of that, Texas loses 3 games, which I think they're going to be phenomenal, but you're in the SEC, anything can happen. So now does that win over a 3-loss Texas team still carry as much water? Those are the things that, like, you got to let this play out, and everybody is disrespecting IU, and I 100% wholeheartedly agree with what Josh said. Curt Cignetti just keep racking up the bulletin board material and putting it out there, and just go out and let people Google you and do what you do.
It's top of the hour.
Beyond the Game brought to you by Schutte Excavating, Gillenhow Funeral Home, Batesville, Chrysler Dodge Jeep, Buy-Right Auto, Decatur County Recycling, and Russ Hubler Ford. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Beyond the Game. Beyond the Game brought to you by Schutte Excavating, Gillenhow Funeral Home, Batesville Chrysler Dodge Jeep, Byrite Auto, Decatur County Recycling, and Russ Hubler Ford. Tom Fleming, Ryan Higginbotham, Jason Simpson live here in studio. Josh joining us via satellite. Still love saying it.
Yeah, and everybody that's watching on YouTube, don't forget, like, subscribe, and ring the bell so that you get notifications of Beyond the Game on YouTube.
Look at Mr. Beast of WTRE.
Yes,
I love it. You are so good, Tom.
Well, I'm going to be in here Tuesday and Wednesday morning, so I have to get back in the flow of things. You know, we were talking about Ohio State beating Texas, but you said, if they finish with 3 losses, they'll make the playoff. I'm looking at Ohio State's schedule, and you have to assume if they beat Texas, they're going to win their other 2 non-conference games. So I'm looking at their Big Ten schedule. If they lose 3 games in conference, they're not going to the playoff.
Really?
No. I mean,
okay, so on the flip side of my argument, let's say they beat Texas, and that's Texas's only loss. You think even then, with 3 losses, Ohio State can't get in?
Oh, if they lose to Texas,
no. They beat Texas, but that's because my argument earlier was, well, you beat Texas, then lose 3 games, and then Texas loses 2 or 3 games. That win doesn't do a whole lot to help you. What if you beat Texas, then lose 3 games, but you're the only loss that Texas has, so they go into the playoff number 1, number 2. Who would the loss? I mean, we all know it's probably not going to happen, but looking at the schedule, what are even a glimmer of possibility that they could lose to in the Big Ten?
Well, I mean, if you believe what everybody is saying on ESPN and the like, Penn State is supposed to be the number 1 or number 2 team in the country. So it is at Ohio State this year. So,
but it's within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not going to get beat by Purdue, so don't say that one.
Michigan.
Okay, so Michigan, Penn State are possibilities.
That's it.
I don't believe Illinois, but I'll put that one as a possibility.
It's an above 0 possibility, just for this argument.
Yeah. I mean, I could see where it could happen, but I would think worst case is 2.
Yeah.
So, if they do that,
if one of them is not Texas,
right.
I don't see them getting to 3.
Right.
So here's how skewed this argument is, and I'm not knocking anything about Ohio State. I'm saying that Ohio State has a relatively tough schedule, and so does Indiana. Like, yes, Ohio State has Texas, which is at home, but they're at Illinois, they're at home against Penn State, and they're at Michigan. Like, if you take those 3 games, they're on paper their toughest 3 conference games: at Illinois, Penn State at home, at Michigan. Is that any harder than Illinois at home, at Oregon, at Penn State? No, it's not. So then you look at some of the other Ohio State games: at home against Rutgers and at home against UCLA. All right, well, Indiana has Wisconsin at home and Maryland at home. I mean, that's seemingly a wash. IU plays at Purdue, so does Ohio State. Ohio State has Minnesota at home, so that would be what, like Indiana having UCLA at home, and so does Ohio State, I guess. But what I'm saying is that's just as easy as a schedule, or hard, however you want to look at it, as Indiana's. And again, I know Ohio State has Texas. Ohio State is in a much different position program-wise than Indiana is, which is leading into what you wanted to say, Jason, or wanted to talk about coming into the second hour, like about Cignetti and the way he's scheduling. So go ahead with your point on what you wanted to talk about.
Well, Tom and I touched on it last week, and I love, again, just add it to the list of 1,001 reasons why Curt Cignetti is my spirit animal. But at Big Ten Media Days, Curt Cignetti, and it wasn't thinly veiled, he took a shot at the SEC when he talked about their scheduling. because somebody said, well, what's your thinking behind dropping that home and home series against Virginia and things? And he says, well, I just took an SEC approach to scheduling. He said, I'm concerned about the 9 conference games. And then he launched in. He had the statistics to back it up. The SEC only, number one, plays 8 conference games. That's number one. Number two, that week 13 or whatever it is, they all play an FBS team or
FCS.
FCS. They all play St. Mary's Sisters of the Poor, the Blind, the Deaf, and your poor and huddled masses. But it was the sheer volume was like over 70 scheduled games across the SEC pre-conference were against the
Eastern Illinois.
Correct. Like your non-Power 4 or any schools like that. It was some inordinate amount, and then you've got that Week 13 scheduling.
Yeah, and part of it with the SEC is they play that game against an FCS opponent the next to last game of the regular season. Yeah. So when everybody in the Big Ten is playing a conference game, the SEC is playing an FCS team.
Exactly. So that's why, like, when he said that, I'm 1,000% on board with it, because in today's day and age, this isn't the old BCS where strength of schedule has a little bit to do with what happens at the end of the year, but it used to be one loss was almost a death sentence.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you're going to find examples where it wasn't, but you sweated for the rest of the year. If you lost week 1, week 2, like – even when you took care of business the rest of the year, you're still kind of nervous and you're looking around and hoping. Now you can lose 2 games and still feel, if you're Big Ten or SEC, still feel fairly confident that, hey, we're going to have a chance to get in this or I shouldn't say that, and Notre Dame. Throw Notre Dame on that. Yeah. But we got a pretty good shot at getting into this college football playoff. And so in no way do I begrudge Curt Cignetti. You should schedule 3 layups. Why not? Work out the kinks against other opponents. Get ready, because once you get to the Big Ten, the SEC can say all they want about how wonderful they are. What was the Big Ten last year against the SEC in bowl games?
5-1.
5-1. Yeah. Correct. 5-1. Who won the last 2 national titles?
Big Ten.
So I'm not in any way taking away from what a great conference the SEC is, but they're not the powerhouse that they used to be. They used to rule college football, and let's be honest, it wasn't particularly close there for probably a minimum of 10 years. They were just better than everybody. And now, top to bottom, with the last 2 national champions, mind you, top to bottom, because both conferences have some stinkers, let's be honest. But top to bottom, the Big Ten is a stronger conference than the SEC, and so 100% on board with Curt Cignetti taking this approach, because somewhere in that 9 games that you're going to play against Big Ten teams, there is a very, very high probability 4 to 5 and maybe even 6, depending what the scheduling gods do to you, you're going to have to be maybe even better than your best to win.
Georgia, almighty Georgia, their schedule this year, now, again, the 8 SEC games, but they play Marshall at home, Austin Peay at home, Charlotte at home, and at Georgia Tech. Actually, it's a neutral site game against Georgia Tech. So is that much more difficult than Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State? No. And then if you throw that 9th Big Ten game in, let's just say the extra Big Ten game added was Michigan State. Well, that's tougher than at Georgia Tech. And Georgia has been an established brand for football for as long as I can remember. So, yeah, it makes no sense to do that. And why would Indiana go out and schedule like a Kentucky, which is a natural rivalry? They played forever. Why would they do that when they're already at Oregon, at Penn State, at Iowa, Illinois at home? Like, there's no reason for that. And, there's a reason that the last 2 years have been dominated by the Big Ten. It's because not everybody in the SEC can cheat anymore while everybody else isn't cheating. Like, look, we know that Michigan cheated. We know that. Look what Jim Harbaugh did. And then when Jim Harbaugh started cheating, look at his record after that. We know Ohio State, there's been allegations at times before, Tom, but look, Ohio State didn't win a national championship for 15 years. So you could arguably say that they weren't doing that when Auburn was doing it, when Florida was doing it, when Alabama was doing it. And now that everybody can pay players, everybody's on a relatively seemingly equal playing field. Ohio State can compete. Michigan can compete. Penn State can compete. Now you bring in, Washington and Oregon and USC. Like, the Big Ten is the better conference than the SEC at this point in time.
And, to your point, like IU Kentucky from a rivalry standpoint would be a heck of a lot of fun to watch. But if you're an IU, who, again, I know we belabor this point, they were in the college football playoff last year, ladies and gentlemen. They are a playoff team. You can never say that they aren't, because guess what? They did it. It does you – so Ohio State, Texas play each other. Two established brands, two of the top teams in the nation. Win or lose, it doesn't really hurt you, right, if you lose. If you win, depending what the other team does, might give you an even bigger boost, right? But 99% of the time, Kentucky is a middling SEC team. They're not good. They're not bad. They just are. They might have a big win in a year, and then they're going to lose 2 games. You're like, how in the world did they lose those? But a loss, like if IU would lose to a middling SEC team, it absolutely destroys their resume because, well, look where they finished in the SEC. Because all these SEC apologists will then look at that. Well, look, they finished 12th in the conference. They're not that good. No, whoa, time out. They're in the SEC. That means that they're one of the best teams in the nation, right? But it tarnishes your record if you schedule a team like that and happen to trip up and lose, as opposed to it hurts your schedule or it hurts your overall resume less beating Indiana State 80-3. Even though, yes, I know it's Indiana State and they're one of the worst teams in all levels of college football. They are just atrociously bad. It hurts your resume less to schedule weaker teams and do to them what you're supposed to do to them than to schedule a middling SEC, Pac-12, or no, well, I guess the Pac-12's coming back, right?
Yeah.
It's just old habit there. Big 12, schools like that, it does you no good to schedule them if you're an IU, because if you lose, it absolutely devastates your resume.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my final point on this is no schedule that is supposedly the third easiest schedule in college football has at Penn State and at Oregon. So,
what's Florida's
than that.
What's Florida's schedule?
When I brought up BYU, I had no idea they were on this list, and I just typed in 10 easiest schedules in college football by Pro Football Focus. Of course, there's nobody from the SEC on that list, because why would there be?
Gauntlet.
Who would have guessed that? But yeah, BYU was number 5. So actually, when I used them as a reference point, that made sense. But yeah, nothing in the SEC. Everybody loves Texas Tech. They're ranked top 15 in the country preseason. They're on these lists of teams that could surprise. Guess whose schedule is easier than Indiana's? Texas Tech. So why Kansas has the 7th, SMU has the 6th. So like everybody that I just read off is right there with Indiana. But guess what? None of those teams go to Oregon and to Penn State. So whatever. We'll be dancing on the ESPN grave when they got to play Indiana for a home game in the first game of the college football playoff this year. That's fine.
That is exactly right. Well, the only reason I ask about Florida, I thought I saw something the other day about how tough Florida's schedule was. Well, they host.
Yeah, I mean, I can pull up Florida.
No, I got it. I've got it pulled up. They host Texas and Georgia, although the world's biggest cocktail party is in Jacksonville, isn't it? Isn't that where they play it?
Yes.
So they're considered the home team this year. They're at LSU and at Texas A&M, so I would probably put that in the same category is at Oregon and at Penn State. That's pretty tough. But they host. I say they host. It's neutral field. They host Texas. They go to Ole Miss, and who knows with Ole Miss. They host Tennessee, and they host Florida State. So most of their big games are at home.
And that's a tough schedule, absolutely. I mean, at least their non-conference games are Miami and Florida State are two of them. I mean, I got to give them. We can't knock what everybody else does, and then that's it. Those are two tough non-conference games, and good for them to schedule those. But it doesn't make sense for them. Just to your point, Jay, it doesn't make sense for them to play Miami, and now they play Florida State every year, but. When you already have Texas and you already have LSU and you already have Georgia and you already have Tennessee, you don't need to play Miami, But they showed some promise at the end of the year, and they were kind of our sleeper pick going back to last year for the college football playoff this year. But seeing this schedule, I think I'm going to leave them off that list.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, DJ Lagway is going to take a step forward, but, man, it would have to be a huge leap for them to survive that gauntlet and be in the conversation, because they could be really good and have the same record they had last year. Weren't they 8-5 last year?
Yeah.
That's a schedule you could play well and go 8-5. So, well, we're going to stay in the world of football, but let's pivot to the NFL, because I know even though it's the NFL, this is going to be something that Tom will have an opinion on, because it involves a former Ohio State Buckeye. Terry McLaurin came out this week, and he has been nothing but the consummate professional. That dude was in Washington when they were the dregs of the league. They were awful, and he just stayed professional. He went out, he did his job, was one of the best receivers in the NFL, and now they've had success, and he was still Terry McLaurin. Just went to work. He was a professional, still was one of the top receivers in the NFL, and all he asked was, give me a little bump. Show me some love here, because all these guys who are getting paid now, I've done what they've done or more. They haven't yet budged on bumping his number up, giving him a new contract, giving him a raise, however you want to look at it. And I don't know if he has gone the Micah Parsons route and officially asked for a trade, but there's talks out there that he is now demanding a trade. So what are your thoughts on him possibly getting traded, and just what kind of professional he's been?
It makes me wonder what in the world Washington is doing. And this is not the Washington that was owned by Dan Snyder. They've got a new owner that has so much money it's ridiculous. But Terry McLaurin, 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons receiving. He was Jalen Daniels' number 1 target, and you're looking at Jalen Daniels, and you're wanting to keep him going as he did in his rookie year, and you don't want to pay Terry McLaurin. And like you said, he's not asking for Justin Jefferson money or Jamar Chase money. He's asking for DK Metcalf money, which is 30 to 32 million in that range. He's 29 years old, so he's got a few good seasons left.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and it's if you want to give him a 3-year deal, $30 million a year with a lot of it guaranteed, he'd probably take that. Although I'm sure he wants a 4 or 5-year deal, without as much guaranteed money. But I don't know if you're Washington and you go to the NFC Championship game, you're going to take away your quarterback's number 1 target. That to me is ridiculous.
And Josh, I know you'll have an opinion on this. You're starting an NFL franchise, and let's say they make you draft by position. So this is the quarterback position, everybody draft, and so you get to wide receivers. And the next 2 available are DK Metcalf or Terry McLaurin. Who you taking?
Yeah, I'm taking Terry McLaurin.
And it's not close, right?
No, not to me. It's not close. No. I mean, DK Metcalf passes the eye test, which helps. But Terry McLaurin, all he does is, like Tom said, what'd you say, 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons?
Yes.
He had 13 touchdowns last year.
Second most in the NFL.
Yeah, and why would you upset the apple cart here? You did a great thing last year with your Washington. You made it to the NFC Championship game. You have a young quarterback in his second year on a rookie contract, and his best target, his favorite target, his best weapon, who is 29 years old, is now holding out of training camp. Like, at some point in time, you have to get rid of these distractions, because what's going to happen in the NFL this year, and I'm not saying that Jaden Daniels isn't going to have a great year, but all offseason teams have had the opportunity to prepare and not 3 days to prepare for Jaden Daniels. So instead of just saying, well, Terry McLaurin's holding out, he's not going to be here, he's not going to be there. Look, give him a contract similar to what Cortland Sutton signed last week in Denver, who turns 30 in October. 4 years, $92 million, with $41 guaranteed. Or give him $41.1 million guaranteed, so he's higher than Cortland Sutton. DK Metcalf signed 4 years, $132, $60 million. So don't you think Terry McLaurin's sitting there like, well, these two guys on the greatest talk show in the history of sports radio said that I'm better than DK Metcalf. If Jason and Josh say it, it's guaranteed. So we already know already that Terry McLaurin's better than DK Metcalf. So give him $61 million. I don't like distractions coming out of camp, especially for non-established franchises. Like Washington is right now. They're not Kansas City. They're not Buffalo. They're not Baltimore. They're not anything like that. Like, who do you think needed a great offseason? Cincinnati. Who's had about as bad of offseason as you could possibly have when it comes to player relations and things along those lines? Cincinnati. Like, they finally got their rookie first rounder in camp, but Trey Hendrickson is still holding out, and they don't need those distractions. So, I'm glad I haven't really seen that from Chicago, but it is definitely time to pay Terry McLaurin, who's also from Indianapolis. Or, here's a crazy idea. The Colts could make some sort of splash at some point in time in the history of Chris Ballard and trade for Terry McLaurin if they don't want him.
But in your statement, you just said the most dangerous words in sports: passes the eye test. And I didn't want to interrupt you, but I almost blurted out, there's also a guy in Indianapolis that passes the eye test. And how does that work out for you?
Well, in training camp, he's not pretty good.
So that's one of those things that you've really got to make sure that you know what you've got. And then, like, you look at guys like McLaurin, again, he's not asking for the world, like, just a little bump. That's show me the respect of that. And Tom, you already said the stats. I didn't see that the rookie finally reported for the Bengals. So did they end up taking out
they got him
that language
fully guaranteed, like every other first round draft pick? That was the point where the breakdown was, because every other first round pick got a fully guaranteed 4-year contract with a 5th-year option. The Bengals didn't want to give him a fully guaranteed contract. They finally broke down and did it, but they haven't signed Trey Hendrickson yet, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So the Bengals shoot themselves in the foot every year.
Here's the thing with the Bengals. That was going to be the outcome from the time that they drafted him. They could try to stand by their guns and do all this, but the outcome was that they were going to cave. So why not just understand that the 31 other first-round picks got that same language that they got the year before and the year before? At no point in time was Shamar Turner, is that who it, or Shamar Stewart?
Yes, Shamar Stewart.
At no point in time was Shamar Stewart going to say, well, 31 other guys got this, but I don't need it. You're right. Like, the only outcome of that was Cincinnati caving and giving him that extra guarantee, or that everybody else got. So it was just unnecessary for the Bengals to do stuff like that, and it's unnecessary for Washington to do this with Terry McLaurin.
And I think he may have reported just so he doesn't get fined. He's just here so he don't get fined. Hendrickson was at camp, but he's just not participating, right? I could have sworn that I saw
I think he is
video
there,
of
yes.
him. He showed up to camp, but he's just not doing anything.
Of who?
Hendrickson.
Yeah, he didn't want that $50,000 a day fine.
Yeah.
That they can't say afterwards, oh, don't worry about it. Now in the CBA, you have to pay it. So, yeah, he was tired of $50,000 a day that he was losing.
So with Terry McLaurin, he has the second highest cap hit on 2025 for the Washington Commanders at $25.5 million. So they still have $17 million under the cap. So you need $5 million to operate throughout the year. They can even lower that cap number if they needed to, or they could front load it, whatever makes sense. But in 2026, they're sitting with the fifth most cap space. They have $74 million in cap space. I don't think if you front load his 2025 and give him an extra 5 this year, and then go right back to that 25 that you were sitting at last year, or maybe it's 18 at that point in time. Like, it's feasible for Washington to get it done, especially with Jaden Daniels still being on that rookie contract. I don't understand why they're not doing it.
Well, and I think that's the key point to make. Why not give the guy a bump now? Like Tom, well, he turned 30 this season, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So he's going into his year 30. You still got your franchise, for no lack of a better way of putting it. Like, your franchise is on a rookie deal for the next 4 years. You've got him cheap. So pay his best target, pay his security blanket through the end of the rookie deal, and then guess what? Everybody will agree he's probably done at that point anyway. He's going to be 34, 35 years old, which, especially at the receiver position, that's old.
Yeah.
So bump that number even a little bit higher than maybe you want to. Go the 3 years, even though he'd want 4 or 5, but you throw a few extra million in the pot there for 3 years. You get him from his prime to maybe the first year of the downhill, but even then, 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, that's a great year if he's able to do that when he's going on 33 years old. Mm-hmm. So granted, it's really easy for us to spend other people's money, but don't complicate simple. I can't tell you how many times I say that on the sideline. Don't complicate simple. To me, without knowing how the salary cap works and things, this seems pretty simple to me, and it really looks like I almost said the Redskins. Holy cow. The Commanders are really making this simple quite difficult.
Yeah, they are.
If for some way, and this would never happen because it's the Colts, but we're an Indiana sports talk radio show, so let's just talk about the hypothetical trading for Terry McLaurin. That, to me, is something that really changes the outlook for the Indianapolis Colts, if they could get somebody in there like that. Now, you have what everybody would think would be the safety blanket for whoever starts at quarterback, and that's going to be what holds them back no matter what. But if you put Terry McLaurin in that wide receiver room, now you're looking at Jonathan Taylor, Terry McLaurin. I'm not a believer in Michael Pittman, but Michael Pittman.
I have to assume you got to unload him to get McLaurin.
You'd have to trade Pittman to get McLaurin as my first.
You wouldn't have to. You wouldn't have to. They have $19 million in cap space. They can work around that. They can convert some other people's contracts to bonuses, and they can fit him under. Look, the salary cap, we all know, is a very movable number in the NFL, and they can easily fit that in with what they're paying him, and especially next year. If you want to backload it, or to 2026 where they have $70 million in cap space, like, it can be done. And typically you don't see player for player trades in the NFL. Is the only reason I'm saying that. But if you can build that room where it's Michael Pittman, Terry McLaurin, Josh Downs, Tyler Warren, Jonathan Taylor, an above average offensive line, that just helps your bad quarterbacks look average. And I really think, to only make the playoffs, either Anthony Richardson, the 4 games that he plays, or the 13 games that Daniel Jones played, they just have to be average, because they're strong enough defensively, and with those playmakers adding Terry McLaurin, there's a way that they can make some noise in the AFC, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, again, staying in the world of football, but now pivoting back to the college world. It came out this week. that one of our favorites on the show, people love him or hate him, and we tend to fall in the category. I don't know if we love him, but we definitely like him quite a bit. Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, came out and was very open and honest about his battle with bladder cancer, and how it's amazing in today's day and age where everything is literally known as it happens. The instant that something happens, somebody knows it. He was able to keep that battle. People knew he had been experiencing things, but had no idea. Like the guess was it was going back to the blood clots that caused him to have surgeries on his feet and things like that. Actually lost a couple
toes
of toes,
amputated,
right?
Yeah.
But what's so impressive is he was able to keep that entire thing under wraps. And he came out and said in his press conference he didn't even tell his two oldest sons, Shadur and Shiloh, because he wanted their focus on making their rosters in the NFL. And again, he's such a polarizing figure, but anybody that watched his press conference and thinks that Deion Sanders is anything but a genuine individual. Look, he's a salesman, and he's a showman more than anything. But that was a guy that was just laying it bare and being open and honest with everything that he had to share. And that's something in today's day and age you don't have to do. You don't have to give anybody anything. But he laid it bare, and he let people know where he stands, and he let people know, look, he is coaching, and now he feels like, after a successful surgery, actually had his entire bladder removed.
Yep.
And things like that. I just came away incredibly impressed with him, because in that press conference, he wasn't the showman. He wasn't trying to wow anybody. He just was open and honest and truthful in what he had experienced and what he had to go through, and I came away even more impressed with him than I already was.
We like to poke at it a little bit, especially me when it comes to Deion and not loving him as a coach and things along those lines. But he's great for college football, and taking out what he did before I get into that, like he's still, whatever he does, he's great for college football, and he's been great for Colorado and things along those lines. But I didn't see his press conference, but I am reading through some of the notes, and look, nobody's ever claimed that Deion is not a good dude and a genuine guy. Like, that's why people want to go play for him. He is a salesman, but he also cares about the kids and has their best interests at heart. And when he's talking about telling people, go get checked, go to the doctors, do all this, like, I think you always see the true Deion, and I don't think that wavers, and that does rub people wrong at some point in time when it comes to competition. But as a man, like, Deion's a great dude, and it was great for him to kind of come out and talk about everything that he went through, and incredible to keep it silent.
Well, and then I don't know if any of you guys saw the video. He had a team meeting right after that. And of course they video everything with him because the guy is intelligent as far as that goes, because hey, get it all on film and we could throw it out on TikTok, YouTube, whatever, because again, like, subscribe, and share. He gets enough views. What's that mean? That's some cheddar in the old back pocket. Yep. But he allowed a senior running back to stand up and address the team, and the kid was saying, I want nothing more than to be here with you guys and to go to battle, blah, 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 but I've had far too many concussions, and the kid wants to be a pharmacist, and so he's getting ready to, after he graduates, he's going to go to pharmacy school, and he's already been accepted, and it's at Colorado. But he's had a lot, but his last concussion was incredibly severe, and he's talking through it. And Deion, you almost get the sense that Deion didn't know this was coming. Like he's letting the kid address, and the kid's almost done, and Deion stops him, and he looks off in the corner. He goes, "We're paying for this. We're honoring the scholarship," and I mean all the way through. Like, for him to become a pharmacist, we're paying for this, and it was like, you don't see that all the time.
No.
There's a lot of now you see stories like that around, But there's a lot of big-time programs that as soon as you have worn out your eligibility or your usefulness to them, you're done. We're moving on to the next guy. And for Deion to do that, I thought was just another sign that, people have him pegged wrong. They think he is that character, that outward showboat showman. They peg him as that. Well, that's who he is. And he just, at so many opportunities, he shows that he's actually genuinely the exact opposite of that. He just has that switch that he's able to flip. And, Josh, you and I have both said it. That's what you want from athletes. You want them to be that person that's able to flip the switch on when you need it, but that's not who you genuinely are. You want to be that humble, kind, genuine person. But then when you step between the lines, you better have a switch that you find that deep, dark hole to crawl into, and you're just a totally different individual. For the, in the NFL, it's 60 minutes, and high school basketball, it's 32 minutes, whatever it might be. You morph into someone different, and then, when the game's over, you crawl back out of there. But I thought that was a really cool sentiment and a cool story to see right after, he had just had that press conference to announce to the world what was going on with him.
There was a kind of backpack off that with the last name Sanders. The Cleveland Browns, unfortunately, have the worst quarterback room outside of the Indianapolis Colts. They have 4 quarterbacks on their roster. There was actually just came out a couple days ago. They're going to have to probably trade one of the quarterbacks away. Which one do you think they're going to have to get rid of?
Kenny Pickett. If he's not the starter, they're going to get rid of him.
And
Joe
he
Flacco's
just get
going to be
hurt?
the start. Yeah, he injured his hamstring.
Okay. So I'm going to take that a step further. I agree with you that they would trade Pickett because you ain't trading Joe Flacco. Nobody wants him. I think they trade Kenny Pickett and one of the 2 rookies as their starter.
I think before the season is over, one of the rookies will start, but I think to start the season, I still think they'll start off with Joe Flacco.
And I need to do a little more research into it, and we might be able to talk about it next week because it gives it another week to percolate. But there are such a wide range of stories out there on Shedeur Sanders. You can find some that say he is like lighting up the quarterback room and he's doing all these things, and then you find others where it says they can't wait to get rid of him and all these things. It's such a varying range of stories, and so I need to dig a little deeper into that because, there's a reason that you fall down the draft board like he did. A guy that was mentioned in the Heisman race for a lot of the season then falls all the way down the draft board to the 3rd day of the draft. There's no doubt he's got talent. So it's going to be real interesting to kind of dive into this and see exactly what the truth is. And again, we'll have another week's worth, and they will probably have played a preseason game by then, won't they?
I think the first game is Thursday.
Yeah, because they had the Hall of Fame game this past Thursday. So next week. Yeah,
I think the first 3 games are on the 7th.
Did any of you guys? The Colts play. Look out!
The Colts play Thursday, and the Browns play Friday. So we'll have a little bit clearer picture. I know it's only game 1 of the preseason, but we'll have a little bit clearer picture.
Well, and you got to think those 2 guys, the 2 rookies in Cleveland, are going to get a majority of this. Is Joe Flacco even going to step on the field? I
would highly doubt that.
He's 63 years old. I think he's probably taken enough snaps. My goodness gracious.
It's going to be a long year in Cleveland, regardless of who starts.
I think if they trade Kenny, which I think would be the right decision, I think all 3 quarterbacks will start at least 4 games.
Wow.
I think Cleveland and I think the Giants are the 2 teams that are going to be fighting for that number 1 seed. I think Cleveland's going to have at least 13 losses, if not 14. I could see each quarterback getting at least 4 starts.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, that would not be ideal for the Browns. But,
and if they finish like that, do they take a quarterback in the first round next year?
Does Arch Manning go to Cleveland?
Yeah. Or Garrett Nussmeier, whoever the top quarterback is.
You know, and let's say Arch is who people think he could be. And we all know this. The only reason people have him projected to be what he is because of what his last name is. It's not because of anything that he's done at Texas. He had a couple glimpses of, that could be okay, but he hadn't done anything yet. So let's hold off anointing him. But do you... And I had this conversation just this past week. Depending who has the number one pick, let's say Arch turns into who people say he is, and he's in contention for the Heisman this year and all of these things. I said, and I stand by this is not a hot take because there is history to show that this could happen. He will be just like his uncle, but in a different way. He'll be just like Eli was, where he said, look, we're not playing in San Diego. He refused. He wouldn't do it. Arch will just go back to Texas. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't like who has if he's projected to be the number one pick, he'll just be like, I feel like I need – it won't be like there's no way I'm playing for them. The Mannings are smart enough to not do that. But everybody will know the reason he doesn't come out is because he doesn't want to go play for, let's say it's Cleveland.
Well, and one of the other things with him, I don't think it's 100% going into this season regardless that he necessarily comes out, because Eli and Peyton both used up all their eligibility. The only thing is they didn't redshirt. And Arch did redshirt, so this is his fourth year. Just a matter of whether he's going to come back for that fifth. But if he's projected to be the number one pick, depending on who has it, I think he goes.
Again, I think he goes too. Like, let's say it's the Saints. You're telling me the Manning family wouldn't love it if Archie's grandson went to the Saints, or let's say it's the Giants. I mean,
New York.
Eli had a phenomenal career there, and he speaks glowingly of playing in New York and things. Or is that because the Mannings, again, are intelligent and Eli actually hated his time there, and he'd be like, you don't want to play there? I don't know, but I think it will be very telling if he has the year that there's no way, because the only experts sit in this room or are on this show. The talking heads of college football claim that he's going to be. If he turns into that, you will know exactly where he stands based on who has the number one pick, if he goes or not. And let's be honest, it's not like we'll even go back 5 years. At this point, granted, it is saying something to be the number one pick in the NFL draft, but number one, he is a Manning. Money is not an issue. But for these college kids, it is not a detriment to your bottom line the way it used to be in the past to go back to college, because that kid's already made more money than any of us will ever, simply based on his NIL deals, and he hasn't started a game yet.
Yep.
So I think it'll be really interesting to see. You start getting towards the end of the year and these things start to sneak out maybe. Well, it's looking like Cleveland's going to have the number one pick, and suddenly the Arch coming back talk gets louder and louder and louder.
There's a lot of good quarterbacks in this class, and I know you guys both said a couple weeks ago, and maybe not you, Tom, but said that Texas is going to beat Ohio State in that first game because of Arch, and he's thrown like 85 passes in his career. I personally would feel better if it was a Cade Klubnik from Clemson or I just had the Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. Those are the guys that have kind of proven it already. Cade Klubnik has started from day one at Clemson, and that's a very successful program. So it's a really deep class of quarterbacks. You said it. Was it Lenoris Sellers from South Carolina? I mean, we don't like.
You mean Drew Anthony Allar. Richardson 2.0?
Right. We don't like Drew Allar, but NFL scouts are going to fall in love with his arm talent, the way he's built, the way he can move a little bit. So they're going to fall in love with that. So Arch has an uphill battle. And yes, when it comes to, maybe the Saints having that first pick or the Giants, Arch is going to be perfectly fine there. And I think the Manning family would be perfectly fine with him at either one of those spots. But, I'm not even convinced that that he's the best quarterback in his conference. And I don't think he's one of the top 2 quarterbacks that are going to go in the draft next year.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure on a team, though, if you have the number 1 pick, that you don't take the guy named Manning. That's tough.
Yeah.
That's going to be tough.
That's exactly right. But part of that, let's be honest, part of that started when the Colts had the guts to not draft the guy named Ryan Leaf and draft the guy named Manning. Mm-hmm. People knew of Archie Manning, and he played for the worst team in the NFL for many years. He was running for his life when he played for the Saints. But Peyton's the one that made this the difficult choice. But it started with a difficult choice on him, and so that makes it kind of this full circle moment. It's kind of cool. Yeah,
and for Colts fans, thank goodness that Jim Irsay overruled, because from what I've read, most of the rest of the people that were involved in the draft process were saying take Ryan Leaf, and Jim Irsay was like, no, we're taking Peyton Manning.
And thank goodness he did.
Yes.
Holy cow. Well, Tom, you got, and I use air quotes. Hey, we're not just a radio medium. They can see me doing my air quotes now. I air quote this, your retirement gift and your Get Off My Lawn Hall of Fame, and one of them was Major League Baseball.
Ah, yes.
It came out this week that one of the top 5 stars, I would say, even today, one of the top 5 stars in baseball, Bryce Harper, was nose-to-nose with the commissioner, Rob Manfred, in a recent meeting inside their clubhouse. And it wasn't supposed to be, this big confrontational thing, but it turned into that because Rob, they're laying the foundation for the new collective bargaining agreement that will come out after is supposed to come out after next season, but they're so far behind on this that they're already talking about losing maybe an entire year of baseball.
Yep.
And Rob Manfred just floated the idea of possibly doing a salary cap. Well, to all of us, that sounds sane when you look at the spending that goes on in baseball. Mm-hmm. But this is exactly like the NIL in college sports. The toothpaste is out of the tube.
Yeah.
You will never, and I know never is a long time, you will never get the players' union in baseball to agree to a salary cap.
The strongest union in any professional sport, that'll never happen.
Can you even fathom any sort of world? What would have to happen for the players to agree to a salary cap? Now that these salaries have gotten to the point that they are, since there is not one. Yeah. Is there any world, is there any scenario you can see playing out that would convince the players to agree to a salary cap?
I don't see it.
Not one.
No.
I mean,
I don't know I don't even know where the negotiations would begin to have that, unless the salary cap was a rolling number for the next 3 to 4 years, and they didn't have to be compliant by it until some of these contracts come out. Because what are you going to do with Juan Soto's deal? He's making $70 million a year, and what if your salary cap is 150? It's just hard to do. And you said it perfectly, Jason. The toothpaste is out of the tube at this point in time. And in my mind, and I think what the players are saying is, and this brings up the trade deadline, there are no poor owners of any sports team ever. None. Nobody is poor. If you are cash poor, then sell your team, Cincinnati Reds. And I take what the Cubs did at the trade deadline, which was basically nothing.
Yep.
You have Kyle Tucker for 1 year. You're 64-45, and your biggest trade is for a 8-hole hitter that can play all the positions in the field. that's batting about 230. Like, the Cubs, you have a chance to compete. The Reds, you're sitting 3 games back of the Padres in the wild card. They added an extra wild card team a couple years ago. And you make basically no moves to shore up your offense against left-handed pitching. So you don't want to make the playoffs. That's the problem, that players are saying, like, look, you have teams that are going out to try to make the playoffs. The Yankees, the Dodgers, the Mets, the Padres, the Phillies, the Astros. But then you have, like, the third most valuable team in baseball by Forbes' list, the Boston Red Sox, $4.8 billion that they're worth. And they made no moves to upgrade their roster. They traded their perennial all-star in Rafael Devers a month ago to save money. The Chicago Cubs, $4.6 billion. Do you think, Jason, in any world, do the Cubs pony up the money to re-sign Kyle Tucker?
No.
Or did they just trade away 2 great prospects to get him for 1 year and not capitalize on it?
No, it's so sad because after the Ricketts family bought it and they did all these renovations to Wrigley Field and did all of these things and went out and they spent the money and they won the World Series, what have they done since? All they have done is get rid of the big contracts. Now, hindsight being what it is, you can look at it and go, well, they were right to do it because Anthony Rizzo was old. Cornerstone of he was the Cubs' Joey Votto, but he was old, so they got rid of him. Chris Bryant, former MVP, couldn't stay healthy, and so that ends up looking like, well, that was a smart thing to do. Javi Baez went from one of the best young players in Major League Baseball to, I mean, he's still with Detroit, I think. Yeah. But I think
he was actually an all-star this year. but I know your point. I keep going. Sorry.
Oh, I didn't realize he made. Well, good for Javi. I always liked him, but the first few years after the Cubs let him go, his batting average was like in the 2 teens, and his strikeouts were like they were memes. They were so bad. Yeah. So those deals end up with hindsight being what it is, they end up not looking like a bad thing. And then, you got PCA who comes through their farm system, is looking like the future of the franchise and guys like that. But man, in today's baseball, it's all well and good to grow from within. I love it. We've talked about that with IU basketball forever. Let's get guys developed, do that. I love that. But the best teams not only do that, they go out and they find 1 or 2 dudes. Mm. If they didn't start with the franchise, like a Kyle Tucker didn't start with the franchise, but has come in and done nothing but help the team, pony up the dough. Like, he doesn't need one of those ridiculous 10-year contracts. You don't need that. And maybe, I doubt it, but maybe that's the world that Major League Baseball can live in. Put a limit on the number of years that you can sign a guy. Maybe not the amount of money, but no more 10-year contracts. You can't sign for more than 5 seasons, or you get a 5+1 or whatever it is. Maybe that's something that they could do. I don't know, but
I don't think the Players Association even accepts that. And if they do, if they accepted that or a salary cap, Curt Flood is turning over in his grave, because back in either 68 or 69, Curt Flood, who was an outfielder for the Cardinals, went to court fighting for free agency for players, because prior to whenever it was that Catfish Hunter, 74, 75, that he went to the Yankees from the A's as a free agent. And Andy Messersmith, that was the other one. That was the first time that players had any freedom of movement at all. You were basically stuck with the team that you came up with unless they wanted to get rid of you. And because of Curt Flood going to court and fighting for it, of course, it ended his career, basically. Nobody wanted him. The players, I don't think they'll accept a length of contract. I don't think they'll accept a salary cap, and I think they'll stick to it.
And I'm go ahead.
Go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, the only way that you could structure it is looking at in my mind, is taking the bottom 10 teams and average them out, which is roughly $100 million just by spot checking it, looking at it, and the top 10 teams, which is roughly $250 million, and then find some common ground and say, look, we're going to allow you guys X amount of years to get under the salary cap, whether it be 5, whether it be 7 years, but the salary cap's going to be $225 million. And you have to basically take the total of what is spent throughout the MLB and divide that by the number of teams, which is 30, and then figure out, what a number is off of that to keep it consistent. Because what you want to do, and I think what the argument is you need teams like the Cincinnati Reds, who are worth $2 billion, to spend more than $120 million on their payroll, or a team like the Miami Marlins, who is worth $2 billion, to spend $69 million on their payroll. Like, you have to have a floor and a cap, but that floor has to be in the $175 million range, and the cap needs to be in $250 range, so you can even out that total amount of money. But yeah, to your point, Tom, I don't see it happening. But hey, if Juan Soto wants to sit out and not make his $75 million for a year, by all means, go for it.
Yeah, and the NBA and the NHL, they both have a floor and then their salary cap. And I think the players would love that a team like the Pirates would have to go out and spend more than what they're spending now. Where you've got one player making more than an entire team is spending on their entire roster. I just think that they won't accept it. Well, we're out of time. Before we go, just a reminder to everybody, if you want to watch us on YouTube, go to YouTube, in the search bar, put in WTRE Radio. Then when that comes up, just go to Beyond the Game, like, subscribe, ring the bell so that it'll give you notifications when we come on. And then also, if you weren't able to listen or watch the entire show, you can go back on YouTube and watch that. If you know somebody that just wasn't able to listen today, but they wanted to, send them to YouTube, and then they can get the replay of the show.
Well, it's
big
just
time.
Yes, we are. It's just like every week. The 2 hours flies by. Our next show, just think, the Anthony Richardson MVP talk is going to be at full speed after his performance in their first preseason game. And I say that he's going to be up for MVP of the other 29 teams in the league after his performance, I'm sure. But I digress. Beyond the Game brought to you by Schutte Excavating, Gillenhow Funeral Home, Batesville Chrysler Dodge Jeep, Byrite Auto, Decatur County Recycling, and Russ Hubler Ford. For Josh Lee, Ryan Higginbotham, and Tom Fleming, this is Jason Simpson. We'll see y'all next week.